Okay, now into part 2 of my Nintendo 64 collection. As you can see, I did all this in part 1. I'm going to do all this in part 2 and all this in part 3. Oh, there's Brock Lesnar right there. Anyway, let's get started with continuation of my monstrosity known as my Nintendo 64 collection. Starting off with Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1. The very first Tony Hawk Pro Skater game of all time. Nobody actually knew who Tony Hawk was unless you were a huge skateboarding fan. Everybody knows who he is now because of this very game. I know this is also on the PlayStation as well as the I believe the Dreamcast. Yeah, that's what it's called. But yeah, definitely a great game if you like skateboarding. Next up, we have Mission Impossible from Ocean Games, based on the movie starring Tom Cruise. This is a very good game. Oh, this is also featured on the it's also based on the TV show back in the 60s. But this is a good game if you like Mission Impossible. Yeah, it's a good game. Next up, get in there. Next up, we have Pilotwings 64. Another one of the first, along with Super Mario 64 and Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. This game, you get to fly around in helicopters, and you can fly on wings and throw bombs at Mount Rushmore with Mario's face on it and becomes Wario. It's pretty cool. But yeah, this is a very unique game, to say the very least. Next we have Cyber Tiger. Tiger Woods playing 3D golf. Pretty good golf game, not as good as Mario 64, but nonetheless, it's Tiger Woods. Next we have the Golden Nugget, which is based on the hotel in Las Vegas, where you get to gamble, like play baccarat and slots, and well, you get to play roulette. It's a pretty good game if you're a fan of gambling. Yeah, it's a good game. Next, we have AllStar Baseball 2001. I'll bet you're asking what's up with the cover. I got this game at a Goodwill, and it was taped with a bunch of other games, and this is the end result when the tape came off. Unfortunate. But All-Star Baseball 2001, what can I say about it? Not as good as those two games right there. Right there. Zoom in on that. But yeah, it's still a good game. If you're a fan of baseball, I highly recommend it. If not, then stick with those two. Next up, we have Gex 64. Enter the Gecko. Quite possibly one of the funniest games on the Nintendo 64. This is also on the PlayStation, where you get to play as a spy gecko. Very spy lizard who's a gecko. It's a pretty cool game. Highly recommend it if you're into that sort of mischief spy adventure thing. But nonetheless, it's a good game. Next up, we have Madden 2002. Madden. What can I say about Madden games on the Nintendo 64? Football games, for that matter, on the Nintendo 64. Football games for the Nintendo 64 are extremely difficult. You will never, ever see me review a Madden game on the Nintendo 64, unfortunately. Although I am a huge fan of this franchise from EA Sports. It's in the game. But nonetheless, Madden 2002, it is what it is. Following up, we have Madden 2001. Like I said before, football games on the Nintendo 64 are extremely difficult, and you will never, ever see me review this game, ever. Unless the end of the world happens. Next up, we have WCW Backstage Assault. Definitely the worst, the worst game the worst wrestling game on the Nintendo 64. I do not recommend it at all. No, I don't recommend this at all. Don't even bother. Next up, Mortal Kombat Trilogy. It's about Mortal Kombat and a trilogy. Fight to the death. Finish him. Flawless victory. Mortal Kombat. What more can I say? Next up, we have Waiale Country Club. The True Golf Classic. Another golf game on the Nintendo 64. Not as good as Mario Golf. And what's with the Star Wars Imperial? Or the logo, right? Look at that Star Wars right there. It's pretty interesting. It's another basic generic golf game. Next up, we have Rampage 2, the Universal Tour. The sequel to Rampage World Tour. I think it was this one where you can play on the moon. It might have been that one, but I think this is the one where you can play on the moon. You got to save all the monsters from being executed and stuff. It's a very good game where you can blow shit up, kind of like the first one. Highly recommend it. Next game, we have Bumble. This is a definitely a unique game to see the very least. It's a bee flying around with a laser. Yeah. A bee flying around with a laser. Gimmicky, people. Just gimmicky. It's a Nintendo 64 game, but nonetheless. Did I skip one? No, I'm good. Next up, we have Rugrats, the Scavenger Hunt. Kind of like Mario Party, just with Rugrats and not as exciting. Next, we have the sequel to Gex. We have Gex 3, Deep Cover Gecko. And look at this. He's doing the Stone Cold Steve Austin pose on the ropes like he's a wrestler. It's pretty funny. This is a pretty good game. I recommend it if you're into that sort of thing. It's a very, yeah, it's a good game, nonetheless. I recommend it. And, let's see. Next up, we have Knockout Kings 2000 featuring Muhammad Ali. Haven't played this game a lot. Might give it a shot sometime soon. On camera, who knows. Alright, next up, we have Mickey's Speedway USA. Oh boy. This is quite possibly, this is the second best wrestling, or, wow, did I say wrestling game? The second best racing game on the Nintendo 64, right behind, where is it? Oh, there it is. Mario Kart 64. Definitely a good game if you're a fan of Disney or racing from Rare. Aubrey S. 1997, I highly recommend you get this game because I know you're a huge Disney fan, so definitely check it out. Next up, we have Lego Racers. Legos racing in cars. What more can I say? Basically it. Next, we have Quest 64, which is basically like a Final Fantasy type ripoff on the Nintendo 64. Definitely not as good as Final Fantasy by any means, but still, it's a RPG on the Nintendo 64. Next up, we have Showtime NBA on NBC. This is an arcade game. This was an arcade game. You basically play basketball like it says. But it's a very, very fun and very addictive game with Marv Albert, yes, as the announcer. So yeah, go check it out. If you're into that sort of thing, of course. Next we have Kobe Bryant, NBA Courtside. This is a very good basketball game, not as gimmicky as the other as the NBA Showtime at NBC, but nonetheless, definitely a good basketball game. Next up, we have, what is this? NBA in the Zone 2000. Haven't really played this game much. I probably will sometime in the future. On camera, who knows? Next up, we have Cruisin Exotica, the third of the Trilogy, the racing trilogy. Cruisin USA, Cruisin World, and Cruisin Exotica. Definitely a great game if you're a racing fan. What's next? Next up, we have AllStar Baseball 2000. Like I said with AllStar Baseball 2001, not as good as these two games right here, but nonetheless, it's baseball. Featuring, is that Derek Jeter? Yes, it is. Next up, we have F-Zero X, a racing game. A great racing game at that. The sequel to F-Zero, which was on the SNES, featuring the greatest character in the history of Super Smash Bros., Captain Falcon. It's a great racing game. Not as good as Mario Kart, but still, it's a great game. Next up, we have Top Gear Overdrive. I'm not sure if this is related to the BBC show featuring Jeremy Clark and James May and that other dude, but if it is, then that's pretty freaking awesome. But this is a great game. The car has teeth, which is pretty cool. Yeah, it's a good game. Good racing game. Next, we have Quake II. I'm really not sure what this is because this is my brother's, but I'm guessing it looks pretty badass. Next up, we have Madden 2000. Like I said before, Madden games on the Nintendo 64 are hard, so you will never ever see me review this game. Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. Not really the best racing game, but still Star Wars, so it is what it is. I know Wahama Mama, #1 fan, is going to like this next game. NASCAR 99 with Dale Earnhardt Sr., rest in peace. Definitely a good NASCAR game, I guess, if you're into that sort of thing. Not really into that whole NASCAR craze like everybody else is. Next up, we have Formula 1. I'm honestly not sure how that came up, or how the game came up this way. Just wear and tear, I guess. But nonetheless, Formula 1 racing, basically the same thing as the NASCAR game. Next up, we have Bomberman 64. Not as good as the other Bomberman games, but it's okay, I guess. And last but not least, or not last but not least, but last one in this part, we have SpiderMan. I am a absolutely huge Spider-Man fan. I had to get this game because I am a absolutely huge Spider-Man fan, duh, like I said before. The story in this is very good. It features Spider-Man going up against his various villains, such as the Scorpion, the Green Goblin, and Venom. And it's a very good game. I highly recommend it if you are a comic book fan or a Spider-Man fan. Cannot wait to see that new movie coming out in July. That'll do it for part number 2. Stay tuned when we finish it off in part number 3.